Not alright. The Dark Souls trilogy may contain some really powerful weapons, but it also contains some real useless stinkers. Which is like exchanging a metallic blade for a sharpened stick of dried up horse manure. In fact, all three games allow you to pull a literal pile of poop out of your arsenal. It's not going to be your number one go-to weaponry, but it can certainly be considered a number two. In fact, under the right circumstances, it can make certain fights, ironically, piss easy. And appropriately, the second game in the trilogy really puts the number 2 at the core of its being. Not merely because of the reputation it might have under people who do not refer to it as best Souls 2, but apart from that kind of toxicity, poison builds are by far the most viable in this particular game. In fact, I already went through this game before as a poison butterfly. But there's another question to consider. What would it be like to go through the game using dung pies as your only source of damage? Well, the problem is that a shitty idea like that goes down the toilet before you even have the time required to sit down. Because dung pies are not accessible from the start of the game using normal standard gameplay. So without using massive glitches or just modding them directly into the game. Because you can only acquire them from joining the Red Covenant by talking to the Red King, either behind the Royal Red Vanguard or Royal Red Authority. In fact, even when using glitches like the infamous parry walk, merely getting to the Red King isn't enough, since he won't talk to you without a red tail in your inventory, which are guaranteed drops from the bosses you would normally need to defeat to get to him in the first place. So it's kind of peculiar that the game even has dialogue for that. And farming reds for them with gravity doesn't even seem feasible either, since any potential drop would be out of reach. So I have a better idea. Well, actually now in hindsight it's a much worse idea. But how about we just accept that we need to defeat the Vanguard by some other means that would at least still be theme appropriate? Well, spoiler alert, this kinda turned what should have been like an early YouTube poop type of video into a tremendous 30-foot third level of torture to even get started with, the actual playthrough. So, in more ways than one, this is going to be vomit-inducing, but it's most definitely going to be crapalicious.
Chapter 1. Douglas had to poop. His butt was all stinky because he had to poop so badly. Douglas squatted down and went poop.
Alright, let the faecal festivities begin by picking a bonfire aesthetic as starting gift. First of all because it has the word ass in it, but it's also quickly going to be very important. And we picked the Knight class for high vigor because we want to get our hands on the cat ring as quickly as possible to survive the fall down the gutter. But first things first, let's go to the Emerald Herald, because by combining 2 girls we get 1 cup of Estus. Well, actually you can even get another one immediately. Because let's face it, the Emerald Herald is the best waifu in FromSoft history. The absolute best one. But enough brown nosing, let's quickly go and flush the Dragon Rider down the drain, so that we have enough souls to buy the cat ring from Selkwar. Or should I say purchase, because this cat... what the shit? I have done this a billion times before. How can I mess up the Dragon Rider cheese?
Ah, fuck. Talk about a shitty start to a shitty day.
Yeah, but okay. The point of all of this is that now we can reach the Grave of Saints. But even if we do, how can we possibly defeat the Royal Red Vanguard? Without any access to poop, that would still count as theme appropriate. Heck, we don't even have a pot to pee in. But how about we dig up a little golden coprolite from the past? Well, as longtime viewers already suspected, I think, as we learned 3 years ago during the butterfly run, the crystal stage of butterfly development is called pupa. Kinda weird though that the AI voice mispronounces it.
Pupa. Pupa.
Well, that's kinda lame and incompetent. At least we don't have to worry about an AI takeover just yet. But the problem is that we first need to extend Marlon's inventory. And we don't even have enough souls to do that. Let alone enough to buy a piece of the butterfly set. Which, by the way, requires the use of that bonfire setting that we started with. So how do we get souls when we cannot attack anything? Well, simply by making more turds go for a splash. Although, better put the seed down first, or else your ass is bound to get wet. But you know, when you think about it, farming in and of itself is already theme appropriate, because other than water, you get the best results by using manure. Now, technically I could have farmed a little less by going for the much cheaper skirt rather than the wings, but I thought it would not be theme appropriate to cover up my character's dump truck.
She's got a great dumper. And by dumper, I mean fecal thoroughfare.
So, now, 3 years later, it's once again time to flutter down the gutter. But for those who don't know, the butterfly set emits a malodorous yet intoxicating odor that can poison enemies merely by being in their presence. Which in theory should allow me to eradicate this entire ring of rancid rodent rapscallions. However, not necessarily in practice, as I found out after running around them for 30 minutes straight, emitting a constant spray of putrid pooper perfume. But even though they are not immune to poison, in case you're under that perception, but they do have incredible high resistance to it. And my build-up simply wasn't high enough. So I definitely got a little scared that defeating them this way was simply impossible. Well, a little scared is an understatement. I was completely petrified. But you know, it would be kinda childish to get scared away from a challenge that easily. The far more mature thing to do would be to drop even more kids off at the pool. I mean, at this point I made this ledge basically my own personal space. However, then some backstabber attempted to invade my little private area. Like, bro, can you give me some privacy here?
What a little turd.
Wow, I would settle for an enema over an enemy at this point. So, therefore I just decided to go for the courtesy flush. Sometimes you just gotta do what you gotta do. Anyway, at least now I can do my business in silence. I mean, even then I'm already uncomfortable given how thin these walls are. Evidently. But eventually I was able to parade around in 2 more poopa pieces. And therefore I went back down into my ass. My ass? I mean the hole in the ground. Sorry, sometimes I don't know the difference between the two. However, if you go even further down, you can acquire the petrification ring, which together with the inherent resistance of Page Shield allowed me to be at least relatively safe from the rat's petrification effect. Although I would still take 5% physical chip damage from each attack. Which sounds very minor, but those add up over time. Especially when you consider that I would need to poison 10 rats before the actual boss even shows up in the first place. And remember, this is Dark Souls 2, so despite this being a massive solid steel great shield, after 10 minutes of getting nibbled at, the shield was at risk. Now fortunately I picked up a repair powder in the room above Melentia. However, that only repairs about half of the total durability. So 15 minutes into this quote-unquote fight, I was simply forced to switch shields, meaning much less petrification resistance, and also consuming much more stamina from each attack that I would block. And as a result, I had to move around a lot more, losing track of the rats that I had been building poison on. So, well, at least I bought 15 of those shields to expand Marlon's inventory, if you remember. But despite all of that, eventually, after 40 minutes, how many of the 10 required rats did I manage to defeat? Not even speaking of the actual boss himself. Well, 0. After 40 minutes, I managed to poison 0 rats. Now, you must be thinking, come on, that has to mean that rats are immune to poison to begin with. No, that's not the problem, as I tested it out on a rat outside of the boss arena. They're not immune, their resistance is simply through the roof. Or down in the gutter, I should say. But regardless, they can be poisoned. The real issue is constant, sufficient build-up. Essentially, you simply cannot afford to move around. The same rats need to be in front of you consistently. And you need to release L1 at the right times between attacks to regain your stamina. But the obvious problem is, there's no place in this room where you can do that, at least reliably enough. Now, putting myself into a corner did allow me to finally get my first kills, but I would eventually simply get killed myself in the process, since I wouldn't have any room left to escape when I inevitably had to heal from the chip damage. Not to mention that you can hardly see what's going on in the first place. I mean, the only way you could get more of a close-up view than this would be on a colonoscopy camera. So how about funneling them together and walking backwards around the wall? Not even that. Because of their shitty AI, the same rats will simply not stay in front of you. So how about dividing them? Well, it doesn't work either, because this room is just way too small for that. Perhaps what I really needed here was some galvanized square steel and screws borrowed from my aunt. In other words, I didn't even make a row dent into their numbers. But regardless, after failing for hours on end, I just couldn't give a rat's ass anymore. And I decided to take a very different approach. Namely to restart the run in its entirety, but on PC this time, as I had been playing on PS5. So first, let's quickly get back to where we were. This time I started with healing wares instead. Quick flush, finger in the ring, no flutter but still down the gutter. In fact, without the pooper armor, I had to decide what would be a theme appropriate armor to replace it, which simply doesn't exist. I suppose that the Throne Defender armor would qualify, since he tends to walk like he's holding something in quite desperately. Or alternatively, that he woke up on the toilet yet his legs are still asleep. Nevertheless, that armor is unavailable, so I determined that a brown armor found deep in what is essentially Majula's public waste disposal would be the best that we could manage. Moreover, I've never even worn this armor, ever in any playthrough. As a fecal matter of fact, I have somehow never even been to this place in the gutter before. Apparently there's even a ladder here leading to another Estus shard, and even a zipline.
Alright, let's hear you say zipline!
Zipline. It was like having the life sucked out of you. That's all it is, sliding down a cable.
Shaka, bro!
Totally fucking stupid, dude!
Now, technically, there are actually 2 dung pies here that you can acquire without the Rat King, which is of no help at all, obviously. However, what if we simply produce it ourselves? In case you don't know, smooth and silky stones aren't merely meant for trading with the crows, you can actually consume them yourself. And if you eat enough stones, you eventually start shitting bricks.
There is a shit on my floor!
Well, or is the floor on the shit, is what Kierkegaard would say.
Alright, so I got myself 99 Courics worth of nauseating nasal passage annihilating nuggets. However, even after turning myself into a mean lean fighting latrine, it still took way more to toxic the rats than it would take to toxic myself. And that's in the best case scenario. Because once more, you simply cannot keep track of which rat I was dumping on. Lock-on would seem the obvious solution, but apart from how that limits your character's movement and the camera movement, it even limits your bowel movement, as you can still somehow miss, randomly switch to another one without intending, or somehow you hit the wall behind you?
And then smear all the walls with poop. And personally, I like the baby green.
Well, then again, I can tell you some public bathroom stories where aiming mishaps evidently aren't solely pee related. So, yeah. Wow. Also, when you succumb to your own smell, you somehow can die before your HP even reaches 0. Well, to be fair, if you're taking a shit and it's even approaching the brim, I would say you're basically already dead at that point. But the real issue is that even 99 dung pies would reach 0 far before I could even get to the point that the boss himself would appear, let alone defeat him as well. Now, the thing is that you do have a poison attack rating that scales with dexterity and adaptability, because apparently ADP wasn't a big enough load of crap as it is with the iframes agility nonsense. However, before wasting time doing even more farming, I decided to check and see if dung pies even scale at all. And apparently they don't. Or if they do, it's so minuscule that it's not even noticeable, like a low E scaling equivalent at best. But other than the toxic buildup that I could inflict, another problem was the amount I would build up on myself. So could I mitigate that somehow? Well, ADP and Vitality, for whatever reason, increases poison resistance, but after some more testing, that difference is negligible as well. But no matter what, I would have to consistently throw dung pies at the same rat at a consistent rate, while staying alive. So I developed a specific strategy that I would like to refer to as the Intricate Bottleneck Strategy, or IBS for short. First, I would lure the rats towards me, and then move to the back of the room on the left side, as to funnel the rats in between the wall and the statues. and then focus on the rat in the front while keeping an escape route on the right side when necessary. This strategy basically did two things: jack and shit. The latter of which is not actually beneficial even in this context. In fact, this wasn't about strategy in the first place. This was simply a mathematical problem. 99 dung pies would never be enough to kill 10 rats plus the actual boss. Especially given that you inevitably, no matter what you do, lose build-up as well. Oh my god, this run hasn't even really started yet, but this is so tiring that I'm already pooped. However, not all is lost. There is still a solution. If you cannot squeeze out a narrow victory, then you simply need to dump a giant pile in front of the fork wall.
Oh god, here it comes! Ha! Ha! Ha!
Because you can actually pick it up right through it in order to replenish your arsenal. Alright then, one final push. Time to really get our hands dirty. Focus, yet remain relaxed, very important. Just go in little chunks, that's okay. Sounds more unhealthy than it really is. Then replenish your arsenal.
No! Oh, hot!
And after all of that, I died. Okay, but how close was I? How many rats did I manage to defeat out of the 11 in total required? No, including the actual boss himself. Well, after wasting 151 of my weaponized waste, I managed to kill, let me calculate, 7? Only 7 rats? And that wasn't even a half-assed attempt, that was a full-assed attempt, pushing at full force. Crapalicious! Well, you would think that I would be smart enough to just call it quits there, or else I would probably end up in an excremental institution.
It's from here!
But I had one final idea I could try out. So, let's go back to my PS5 character, and I went to Shelquire to purchase 10 alluring skulls. And other than that, I definitely need Melentia's remaining life gems. After all, she won't sell an infinite amount before defeating the last giant. So at least we can make... Oh, what the hell? Whoa, I didn't mean to fart in your store. Oh damn it, now one of the most important NPCs in the game is aggroed. And I can't undo it since the guy who grants me the ability to say beg my pardon for farting is completely out of reach. Well, fortunately, I did back up my save. You know, the thing that I should have done when I accidentally killed the mimic in the one-shot run, but that's beside the point. The thing is, it could have been a lot worse. So I traveled back in time, made sure to remove the Poopa armor this time. I also talked to Kill for the key, and made sure to pick up Johnny Depp's ex-wife. But what I really needed was a fragrant branch of yore. And with the cat ring you can actually jump all the way across this gap, and that... I said all the way! What the hell? I thought that the butterfly skirt was supposed to extend your jump, but it slows you down and makes the distance shorter. Okay, so let's take it off and then we can actually make... The son of a bitch! Okay, apparently even with the cat ring, my HP is still too low. Well, good thing the life ring is close by. Namely hidden behind that door that can only be opened by triggering the soldiers to open it for you. So just lure them around and that... Pieces of shit! Come on, just open the damn thing. Okay, I got it. So, now I should have enough health to survive the fall. What the fuck, bro? I can survive jumping out of a high rise, but I somehow cannot survive this jump. Well, alternatively, Melentia sells a fragrant branch, but that requires 12,000 souls. I think you know what that means. Anyway, I can finally go to my next step, which is to go all the way down the gutter, because there we can pick up a pyro flame. Also, since I hadn't picked up the brown armor on this character, I made sure to... Oh, by the way, what are all these items? Yeah, that was part of the plan. Fuck me, I hate this game. So, I picked up the armor again. Took another ride on the zipline, which is actually boring as fuck. But I'm not going to make this into a video warning people about the boredom risks of ziplining. because if it goes viral, I might end up jacking it in San Diego. But I think we're getting off track a little bit, so next step is to depetrify Rosabeth.
Get the fuck out of here!
Alright, so let's go talk to her and... what the hell is that guy doing? Son of a bitch, I'm just trying to be polite and this is certainly no way to talk to a lady. Not a pragmatic one at least. And I can't teach this fucker some manners because he is immune to toxic obviously. So quickly use some solder pops and that's not enough. Uh-oh. Well, actually I had to do that anyway, because other than to supplement my pooper perfume with some fart spray fragrance, I would need far more than 2 casts, so that's what the Amber Heards are for. Alright then, so we're finally ready for the final possible theme-appropriate method I could think of to actually get to the red oops. I don't have any attunement slots. You need 10 attunement for that. Okay, how many levels do I have to...
Uh-oh!
Okay, so now we can finally try out our final strategy. Well, the thing is that it still requires at least 2 casts of colon cologne to poison a single rat, which on a side note is a fragrance truly worthy of the title Eau de Toilette. But if you're lucky, you can at least poison several at once that way. On top of that, I also had some luck while guarding. Now I did have to switch shields and eventually repair my great shield. But finally we actually managed to get through all 10 required rats in order to make the actual boss appear. However, I was out of casts obviously, and also out of Amber Heards, meaning I had to rely solely on the pooper perfume. And here's the problem with that. Contrary to the regular rats, a single proc of pooper perfume does less damage than his entire health bar. It's a fixed amount after all, and it's not high enough. Meaning I would have to do it twice somehow. However, the boss can inflict poison himself, which my shield can't properly guard against, forcing me to move around way too much. Simply put, I would have to somehow save enough cast of my fart spray fragrance for the boss specifically, so at least 4, but then I would not even get to the point that I could make the boss show up in the first place. Crapalicious. Is there any way to get more spell restoration items? Okay, the sorcerer guy in No Man's Wharf sells them, but he won't talk to you unless you have 8 intelligence. Well, at least that's not so high. How much do I have?
Uh-oh!
Okay, you know what? We're not doing that again. I mean, the Dutch are not exactly known for being far... yeah. Okay, that's beside the point. But the thing is that there is an alternative method. There's some ruse water that you can get with the help of Licia, some more Amber Heards in things betwixt, and even Crimson water from the Crow trade that restores 2 casts at once. In fact, in the hidden room with the sorcerer's staff, there's even more Amber Heard. And while I was here anyway, another Ashes shard and a repair powder for my great shield if necessary. Now, certainly that should be enough. In theory, yes. In practice, not necessarily because of RNG. Because sometimes, even after 2 direct casts, only a single rat would be poisoned. In essence, you need the right amount of luck that multiple rats at once stay long enough within the coprophagia cloud, so you can actually get enough value out of your cast. Given that we need at least 4 for the actual boss. And that's only if you're lucky enough that he chooses to stay long enough in the cloud. Okay, we can do this. This is the last chance I have to, actually get started with the playthrough. How far are we into the video right now? Fuckalicious. Well, appropriately, this entire video has been full of shit so far. So I think it's time to get serious. But anyway, the boss is here. And I should have enough gas. But apparently he doesn't go after alluring skulls like the other ones. Oh, that definitely makes it a lot worse. Okay, but don't scream. The more silent, the more deadly. Okay, one proc. Yeah, second proc. Staying alive. Yes. Yes. I don't care how many attempts that took. It was still definitely a third try victory.
Chapter 2. Why are we here? Douglas cried, as poop came out his wiener. It was wiener poop.
Well, it only took 9 hours to get to this point. Which in hindsight, if I went with poison mist from the start, would probably only have been an hour or so. Can't think of it. But now at least we can finally get started with... what was the run about again? Oh yeah, it's a Dung only run. It doesn't feel necessary like one per se, but... at the very least, I should be worthy of the king's royal defecation after crowning for 9 hours. Regardless, let's get started, because we got a mission, an aim, and most certainly a duty.
Questions? Yeah.
Can we have your poop?
No, guys, I'm not going to take any requests for my microbiome.
Please, can we have your poop?
Okay, I'm not going to stay out here, you guys. It's just, you're not taking my feces, so does anyone have a real question?
Can we buy your poop?
Well, we automatically receive the crest of the red ring, which should increase poison and toxic buildup, but I'm pretty sure that this only applies to melee weapons, and that dung pies are completely unaffected. Regardless, let's see how effective they are in the first place by testing them out on the last giant butthole. Hey bro, I think you stepped in something. Oh wow, it only takes 3 poops per proc, and that takes away over half of his health bar. And given that resistances don't increase like in Elden Ring, any additional proc will require the same amount. Now that is some solid consistency. So let's liquefy our assets for our fecal finances in the wasteful world of excrement economics. Dung pies are pretty cheap, but given how many we need, that's still a lot of souls. And then let's continue on to our second encounter. And hey, he might be a floater, but he can still sink like a brick if you just approach it like this. Simply go over here and throw some poop. And then over here, you also throw some poop. Then over here, throw some more poop. Over there, you throw some more poop. Move around and throw some more poop. And then you go like this and you throw some more. Oh, yeah, I missed. Okay, I guess locking on works even better. But yeah, it didn't exactly take that long to flush the pursuer down the sewer. In fact, I already knew how effective smearing sewage all over the shiny armor of the rune sentinels can be, although I'm not exactly sure why a living set of armor would be explicitly weak to poison and toxic. But if you have trouble dealing with them on level 1 for example, this will actually make the fight significantly easier. Heck, in theory you can even throw at them while they're still down on the ground. Although, not necessarily in practice, given that with my aiming skills I would have a better chance hitting things from a distance when playing Doom Eternal with an NES zapper. Regardless, despite my lack of skilled marksmanship, it was still easy to poop shoot my way to victory, given that you can just kite them around the room, while the life bars slowly circle the drain. So you could say I destroyed them, more appropriately that I ruined them, but in this context I would say that I wrecked them. Now, rather than restocking, I decided to level ADP, not merely for additional poison resistance, which doesn't seem to even help that much, but because I would be doing a lot of dodging, and the Lost Sinners hitboxes can be pretty dodgy, meaning that they are harder to dodge. I mean, that's correct grammatically, right? English. But before going there, I really needed to go and collect a bonfire aesthetic. However, watch out along the way, because these guys run and they explode and they're gonna blow up. Or even vaporize the door for you. Well, I'm sure glad that Jehovah's Witnesses don't have that kind of power. And, hey, hello. I didn't want to go down the elevator at all. Well, this is fucked. Lol, they can't survive. Oh, they can. Oops. And my health bar vanished like a fart in the wind. Crapalicious. Okay, try again and now firmly grasp that ascetic with both hands. Now, unfortunately, I didn't have a flame pooper in my inventory, meaning I would have to carry a torch all the way from the bonfire, through the water, and, well, it's not merely when taking a dump that a massive splash can ruin your day. Oh, and on a side note, I did pick up the rose shield to serve as some air freshener, because this run is certainly not smelling like roses. But the problem is that I forgot to equip it. And I don't mean just for the next fight, I mean for the entire remainder of the playthrough. I think you would all agree that that's not very practical, but longtime viewers will also agree that it's very press continue. But the problem with the lack of light in the Lost Sinner fight is that it's not merely a visual limitation, it actually significantly reduces the range of your lock-on, meaning you have to be extremely close. Which is annoying because the Sinner tends to jump away a lot. By the way, I don't exactly know the lore behind what sin she committed, but I would say that she paid her dues after enduring a deuce in the face. Oh, and by the way, there is a misconception that leveling ADP speeds up the throwing speed of throwable items. But as far as I know, that's not actually the case. But I understand why people would think that, because it does speed up the animation speed of using consumables. And we tend to lump, big smelly lump, them together into a single category. But the game does not. They are considered separate categories. Which is a good thing because I'm not comfortable referring to dung pies as consumable. Nevertheless, now we need to delve all the way into the very bowels of the gutter.
We shall erect statues of you out of our dung.
And although so far the boss's health bars have been quite squishy, the Rotten is a massive tank. But fortunately not a septic tank, despite appearances, because even though he's the boss of a poison area, he is still susceptible to poison and toxic. Even to the point that it makes him vomit.
I am the great mighty Pooh, and I'm going to throw my shit at you. A huge supply of tish comes from my chocolate starfish. How about some scat, you little twat? Now I'm really getting rather mad. You're like a niggly, tickly, shitty little tag nut. When I've knocked you out with all my bab, I'm going to take your head and ram it up my butt.
Your butt?
My butt.
Your butt?
That's right, my butt.
Ugh.
My butt.
Ugh.
My butt! I'm flushing! I'm flushing! Oh, what a world! What a world!
Now that's what I call a bowel movement.
Yeah, I suppose that comparing the Rotten to a pile of poo, while I'm the one who's doing the feces flinging, is a little bit like the pot calling the kettle all shades of brown with little hints of undigested paprika. But although that fight wasn't exactly difficult, it did require a lot more dung pies compared to all the previous encounters. And given that we are forced to defeat him 3 more times in order to open the Shrine of Winter, that might be a real pain in the backside. But in order to do that in the first place, we need more ascetics, which we can acquire in the DLC. So, first we get rid of the invaders and then hide away from the 2 giants. Lol, from their perspective the poop is literally coming out of a dark cave. You know, in this kind of run the jokes basically write themselves. And as long as the invaders aren't around, after killing one, you can simply quit out, and for whatever reason you automatically get the key that leads to the key that leads us to the DLC. And in turn, after burrowing deep into the DLC, I got another key, and that leads to a room with 2 more ascetics that we need. Now, although Sanctum soldiers are obviously immune to poison and toxic, in principle you can actually farm them using the trap on the staircase. However, I didn't bother with that, because just like with the Red Ring, I'm almost certain that the Sanctum soldier gauntlets do not increase the buildup of dung pies. I'm not even sure if it works on spells. I think it only works on melee weapons with poison infusion and or innate poison buildup. Regardless, now we can resurrect the Rotten, and I must say that this is just morbidly funny. Imagine being like a giant pile of poo, but not immune to poo, and then you get killed by poo, only to be revived only to get shat on 3 more times. I guess the only thing worse would be if it was a bear-type boss named Winnie or something. Alright, there we have the 1,000,000 souls required to pass the Shrine of Winter. Now, Shanalot didn't seem all that impressed by exactly how I managed to get here. But hey, just like a turd that you forgot to flush, it may be cold on the outside, but it can still be warm on the inside. And in that sense, a lot of characters have specific character types. The Emerald Herald is definitely a Sundere, Nashandra is a Yandere, Shalquar is a Neander, and Freya is a Spider. Also, in the first place, it's a really good thing that the Shrine of Winter skip with the 1,000,000 souls is even a possibility, given that poison and toxic immune bosses make acquiring all the Lord souls completely impossible. However, having said that, there are in fact toxic immune enemies that would seem to be required to open the door towards the Dragon Riders. However, if you simply lure the petrified Cyan Knight all the way over to the door, you can use his soul instead. But now, hand it over, your dark stool, for my lady's painting. Yeah, it's the best I could do, because I might turd fling like a king, but these queen-size poops are too heavy to reach the actual queen. Yet. You know, I've always referred to the Double Dragon Riders as Bimmy and Jimmy, due to the infamous spelling error in Double Dragon 3, but under these circumstances, Billy is more appropriate, given that Bill is Dutch for buttock. However, something I don't understand about Americans is that they somehow regard Bill as short for William, and Jim or Jimmy for John. But hey, it works for me, Billy and John. Dutch buttocks on an American toilet. In fact, this might be the first DS2 run in which a Dragon Rider would willingly go and take a bath, rather than being let down into the water unwillingly. I am still in a dream.
Loathsome dung eater.
Well, so far, after the whole rat fiasco, everything has been quite digestible, a piece of cake and easy as dung pie, but now we have a massive obstacle that might put a period at the end of this playthrough. Well, not to worry, it's merely a semicolon, because it is in fact possible to use a mannequin soul for the golem statue as usual, but the problem is that their poison and toxic resistance might be the highest of anything in the entire game. Perhaps due to the fact that they don't even have a nose, or a hat on which said nose could be attached to in the first place. But they are not immune. Regardless, even though I did manage to lock one of the mannequins in this room with me, without the danger of the other one interfering, but even one-on-one, turtling behind a great shield, I just could not consistently enough get a sufficient amount of dung pies in to get the toxic going. The faecal of the matter was that I completely depleted my entire stack and still no results. So, is this the place where runs like these dry up? Ah, come on, no need to get your bowels in a twist. We don't have to get all constipated about such a tiny blockade. Let me tell you how to do it. Lock one of the mannequins in the room, then move all the way around without sitting at the bonfire, go back up the ladder, and stand in the doorway. Now, we do need a lot of luck, but if we keep throwing with intestinal fortitude, eventually we can do enough toxic buildup. Of course, then you have to make sure that you run towards the statue in time to make sure that the mannequin is close enough. And there we go, easy peasy ain't a squeezy. Now, I'm not actually sure about this, but I think that the invaders summoned by the Looking Glass Knight are in fact immune to poison and toxic, although I doubt that would apply to actual human invaders. Regardless, they might simply just have extreme resistance, just like the mannequins, but in all honesty, you don't need to worry about them in the first place. Just focus on the boss and kite them both around the arena. After all, with an invader out, the boss himself becomes a bit less aggressive to begin with. And when he is summoning, he is especially vulnerable, despite that he would normally take reduced damage, but that has no bearing on status effects. So it didn't take long until this knight in shiny armor no longer had shiny armor. In fact, after such an embarrassing defeat, I doubt that the Looking Glass Knight was able to look at himself in the mirror. Oh, on a side note, I also gave the horse his manure back, because slowly wading through Drang Lake's giant water closet, known as Shrine of Amana, without a true ranged attack, can be an extreme pain in the ass. So a butt cover like Gower's Ring could at least help me out a little bit. But at the very least, nothing here is immune or even resistant to toxic. It might be a very slow and lengthy and meticulous process, but with enough patience, slowly but certainly, you can eventually plop out another victory. Well, in the sense of getting to the next bonfire, because the boss of the area is still up ahead, of course. Now, for some reason, I would automatically assume that a green boss would be immune to poison, especially a frog. But Kermit here is actually quite weak to it. In fact, you don't even have to wait for him to pull back his foreskin, because again, damage reduction has no bearing on status effects. And you know, as much as I hate duo fights, I do think it's a shame that there is no double Demon of Song fight, because then we would have had the foreskin duo way before Elden Ring introduced them. Heck, maybe they wouldn't have introduced them at all then, and that would be fine by me. Oh, and speaking of Elden Ring, I have some additional business to take care of with Egdyne, if you've seen my previous video. I bet that scared the hell out of him, although ironically I'm the one shitting bricks. But fortunately, Velstad is nothing to be afraid of, because for the third time, damage negation has no bearing on status effects. So despite his massive buff when he goes into his second phase, the damage we inflict, and even the build-up to get that damage in the first place, remains exactly the same. In fact, another good SL1 tip. Ah yeah, poor Velstad. Imagine dedicating yourself to a cause, sacrificing your life for the king, protecting him even in the equivalent of death, and then that legacy literally gets shat on. Well, it's a dirty job, but someone got to do it. After all, I have to make sure that I can put my finger into the king's ring in order to gain access to the next area. Although, even though I could now unlock the dark gate to Aldia's Keep, I decided to first pay a visit to the Porcelain Throne of Want, because given how much hate I have for the Throne Wanker and Throne Defecator, it was most cathartic to give them an excruciating demise. I suppose it would even have been theme appropriate to dump the Throne Wanker down the abyss, but there was really no need for that. The only thing to keep in mind is that you need to get their health bars down quite evenly, given that they can heal each other. And since like this their health goes down in massive chunks, massive chunks, that might seem more difficult to calculate, but then again you don't have to wait to build up toxic on one while the health of the other drains away. Mwahaha, flawless victory, faequality. Now, despite how much time the Guardian Dragon spends in the air, he was probably one of the easiest fights in the game. Not only does it merely take 3 dung pies to get the toxic going, but the damage will keep going while he is spending time up in the air, out of reach. Apparently this isn't even a real dragon, but one of Aldia's sick and twisted experiments. Well, I have one of my own, by mixing some poo and pee together.
And so when the pee got mixed with the poop, it smelled like a butt.
So then I acquired the Ashen Mist Heart, took very little effort to acquire the Giant Kinship, and thus with the end of the run so close at hand, I bet you have tears all over your face. But before you start wiping your cheeks, there is actually something else that we can include. Because although most of the DLC bosses are immune to poison and toxic, that does not apply to Ava and the Ivory King. Although their resistance to it is on par with, or perhaps even higher than those of the Royal Red Vanguard. Not to mention how high their health pool is by comparison. I mean, as you have noticed, after we had finally acquired the Dung Pies, for the most part we've been running through the game at the speed of Taco Bell. But now we are facing an actual challenge, because not only does Ava have extreme toxic resistance, but if you think you can just mindlessly duke out your dookies, he will absolutely slap your shit. But on top of that, he will constantly move away, allowing the invisible bar to go down in the meantime. Meaning that in practice it takes even more hits to finally get the toxic going. In other words, you will need to pray to RNGesus for some incredible favorable RNG. Unfortunately, not only is he countering your prayer with an Ave Maria of his own, but remember that the toxic does a fixed amount of damage. namely 1485. And take a guess how much HP Ava has. 8930, meaning that after painfully squeezing out 6 procs, my gut was running on fumes, meaning I didn't have enough left to proc Toxic again to get rid of that freaking 20 HP that remained. Yep, 99 Dung Pies was not even enough. Okay, I think we'll have to bring out the big guns for this one. So allow me to order let's say a refill.
Hello, shitty walk. Take order, pre.
Yeah, can I have some shitty beef?
Shitty beef.
And some shitty chicken?
Shitty chicken.
Okay, and to really get to the purest pandemonium of apocalyptic plops ever, the shitty shrimp.
No, wait, please, stop! Please, not the shitty shrimp.
Okay, now let's dump out our arsenal in front of the fog wall, and then go back for said refill. So now, if we run out, we run to the fog wall, in order to get the runs to keep the run going. However, this time, apparently, RNGesus was like, okay, I'm done with this shit. And just gave me the luck required to get all 7 required procs without requiring our additional compost heap. But hey, fair enough, let's just take it back.
You know that feeling when the huge dump you just took shoots back up inside your ass?
Alright, but now shit truly hits the fan. Which not only doesn't provide us with the most favorable type of air conditioning in the heat of summer, but things got a little too spicy for the pepper when we drop all the way down into Satan's asshole. Where we not only cannot rely on the power of RNGesus, but the fork wall is obviously out of reach, meaning that we're stuck with only 99 shits to give. And here's the problem. I need to keep all of them for the Ivory King, who also has that extreme amount of toxic resistance, requiring 6 procs in total. But the thing is that he won't even show up, because my knights weren't able to get rid of all the other knights. In fact, even if I could afford to waste some of my waste against them, 1 proc wasn't even enough if they had too much health remaining. And we're only talking about a single knight. And supplementing my poop with some poopa? Yeah, that might be possible, but that didn't seem all that feasible either. Yeah, I guess it was inevitable that after starting the run with a complete shit show, it would end like one as well. That it would end in the shittiest way possible. I suppose this playthrough wasn't fit for a king, but at the very least, more than sufficient for the queen who, lore-wise, is a complete poopyhead, with her evil scheming and whatnot. But regardless, in the end, the one place where all of us can be a solitary ruler is by sitting down on the porcelain throne. And my Polish viewers reminded me that pupa in Polish means butt. So it's only appropriate to put the pupa skirt on my character's pupa while plopping down on the porcelain throne of wand. So if you enjoyed this video, then wow, you have some real peculiar taste. But if you did, give it a thumbs up, give it a thumbs in, dump a comment down in the comment section, never forget to flush, and for the love of fuck, close the door, because no one wants to see that shit.